All right, so I want to talk about fertilizer. And if you're not balancing your soil with a more complicated way with like a soil test and a consultant like I spoke about, you just want to be able to apply nutrients to the soil regularly when you plant, and then maybe every 3 or 4 weeks you want to be able to side dress them for the vegetables that are in the ground for a long time. And in an organic system, you're just adding plant material, right, or animal material. So an example of plant material would be like dried and ground like alfalfa, which is called alfalfa meal. You also have like a soybean meal, which is the bean of a soy plant and then dried and ground up. Seaweed, so it's dried seaweed and ground up and it becomes a dust, and that's seaweed dust. Those are examples of plant materials that can be used to help apply nutrients to the soil. And they're not instant nitrogen. What they're going to do is they're going to break down over time in the soil through biological activity in the soil, through soil that's alive, and in turn, that's going to feed the plants. An example of animal material that can be used is like a fish meal, which is dried and ground fish, and that applies a wide spectrum of nutrients for the plants to use. And the same thing's happening. That's going to degrade in the soil through biological activity, and then in turn that's going to feed the plant. And then there's also manure and compost. Compost has a lot less fertilizer, and it's more of a soil building tool like peat. But you have something like a chicken manure, and that can come dried and pelleted, and that's an all-around fertilizer and has a lot of calcium in it. So if you've balanced your soil and you know what you're deficient in, then you want to choose your fertilizer based on that, right? So if you have everything in your soil already, then you just want to add a lot of nitrogen, which a nitrogen fertilizer is going to be more a fish-based or feather meal, alfalfa, things like that are going to apply mostly nitrogen. If you just want to add an all-around fertilizer regularly, then you want to add a kelp, which is for micronutrients, and maybe a pelleted chicken manure, which is an all-around fertilizer, right? It's going to have N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. It's going to have all three of them for you, and it's in a form that's not going to burn your plants. So here, we're going to take a look at each one. What I have in here is a mixture of a seaweed biochar, which is just charcoal, which help the soil life and hold moisture and nutrients. I also have alfalfa meal in here, fish meal, and feather meal. So for me, this is more of a nitrogen fertilizer that also adds micronutrients. And for my soil, which is really well balanced, this is a great fertilizer for me. But in this raised bed, right, which was just created, there's been no balancing whatsoever. This is probably more like what you're going to find in your garden. And so what I'm going to do is add both. I'm going to add both my mix of fertilizer with nitrogen and micronutrients, as well as my all-around fertilizer, which is the pelleted chicken manure. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add that, and then I'm going to scratch it in a bit. just working it into the first inch, half inch, so that the soil life can start to break it down.